This was the fall, and the Beijing Motor Show was coming up next year spring. Fan, who is our boss, he said we're going to do a sports car contest. The first real sports car for China. I couldn't believe it. I had to pinch myself. Today we're going to look behind the scenes of the GAC Enpulse concept car. Van Studio in LA, we are very human-centric. I really believe in working with a smaller team, but a much higher quality. First of all, everyone in the studio needs to be hands-on and creative. That's very important. We all meet and we discuss design. When we have ownership in so many areas, it erases borders and people feel I have a part of this. I do count. The concept car Enpulse, it's a first on the China market. So we don't have any reference. We start with the storytelling. That's the first thing. What the car is about, what is the target group, what we want to achieve. The stories that we always start telling with mood films is about humans and their life and their expectations. That's the very core of it. What would the car express? For us, it was young, freedom, and a little bit of show off. China is interesting. Automotive industry has gone like that, but they lack the fun parts, the sports cars. This is not a necessity. This is just pure joy. We're going to get an exciting look behind the scenes of the GAC Enpulse. I work with UX UI for many years. How do you get your pulse pumping when it's an electric, very silent car? A lot of that is happening through a visual input, and that goes then to the UX UI.
When we approached this project, it wasn't just designing a sports car. How do you really stimulate? How do you provide an experience without all the sound or the vibration of the engines and or these exhaust fumes, or even sometimes the smell of the gas? And I think you are also kind of playing with the idea of these like lighting. How can you visualize a speed?
You did like sketches.
Just to imitate that flow of like movement.
Millennium Falcon going into
exactly.
hyperspace,
Right?
right?
Yeah.
I push a button, I want to see something. And that's where everything emits from that touch. And then I see light emitting out from that. It shows that the car has a soul. And we work with different kind of pulsating lights and like a pulse, like a living creature. Our dear Chinese colleagues, while they were here, I remember we had a crazy day of people bringing in their personal cars, and there were classic cars and sports cars and loud and insane. It was the first time they ever been in a sports car. And then we went to PCH here and we drove to Laguna. And I have to admit that some of us drove a little bit too fast because we got inspired, but they got such sensation out of what a sports car is and how you can live with a sports car and what it's about. And I think they got a lot of inspiration. And then of course, opening up for the Adigo world, which is already happening.
Incorporating the Adigo universe into the sports car. Matt came out with the idea about the virtual battle, where you're basically in the car, you're on a track with the AR technology. You are also seeing how other people have gone to exact same route. Virtually, you are basically racing with other drivers and on other basically Adigo users. I mean, that sounds very cool, I think.
A classic sports car always have beautiful instrumentation. You know, when you were a kid, you always thought like it can do 320 kilometers because that's what it said, but you had all of these beautiful manufacturers. It was so linked together. Now with the digital world, we kind of lost that a little bit. What we really tried to achieve was to have a layer of beautiful instrumentation and not only like a map and a playlist. We have different kind of modes in our UX UI where there is instrumentations where we replicated 6 of the classic kind of instrumentation but done in a digital way. It's much nicer to come in an interior where it speaks to the rest of the graphics and you can feel it's a sports car and you get this homage, this little more romantic look to it.
Bringing those internal combustion engine statistics into electric. So battery has its boost, its power, its temperature. I mean, those are all very important things when you drive EV.
It really complements the car, and it's not, that's the instrumentation, it has nothing to do with the rest of the color or the graphics. And I think this is very important. It's something I dearly miss on a lot of vehicles now.
When it comes to our screens, we have the cluster, which is acrylic, and we have the screen facing the driver, and then an additional screen. And rather than just having the rear view mirror, we had the screen further up on the IP, and also it would show like additional information as well, rather than just a rear view camera.
But it's still very logic, you know, how we have the air vents in the center of the display. It is different screens, obviously, but for the user, it's just one piece of screen, which then have air vents protruding, and then you can interact with the temperature and the fan through there. So it is erases, as we always try to do, the borderlines between physical and digital properties.
Because it's such a, interior is always ergonomic driven, we had to move the certain graphics and the screen location away from steering wheel handle, so we can see the visuals, and we had to reorganize, kind of position those graphics together. The left gauge, the 2 gauge, the center gauge with the 4 gauge, and trying to be able to see, you know, the rear view mirror, the other gauges, the text size, all that from driver's point of view. Shape has changed multiple times, so it works together with the UI design.
So I think that was really important. Exterior, interior, and the gauges all together, very holistically. We also thought a lot about the colors, what kind of colors to use to the gauges, to these single lines, 1 pixel, 2 pixel, it's just very important stuff. A lot was also done by our team in Guangzhou. Every time I go, I see the energy, the talent. When we combine our ideas, it just gets that much stronger.
Speaking of flare, the exterior body, the Lumilor graphic started with some random patterns and this graphic, that graphic, and then I think, was that you wanted to see like a night scene of a street of China, and they start bringing up these Chinese characters. It just came out really cool graphic on the body side, yeah.
No, I think that's the strength of our team, is we have so good working relationship with China, and we exchange ideas, and we have this ping pong, and that's why we can function as efficient we do. UX UI, I say it's storytelling, it's story interaction, it's people treat it very abstract, but it's actually something that should be very human-centric. You should not feel that you're dealing with a machine. There always have to be a super important balance between exterior, interior, and the details. If we look at the interior, it's very technical, it's very precision, it's coherent, and sometimes opposites attract, but you need to have that kind of mix. One of the things that I was thinking about, it's the whole kind of heritage that a sports car have. We coming from Europe or North America, we are raised with sports cars culture, and in China they don't have it. And what would a new sports car be, especially as an EV-based one, and not being a cliche, because we have no heritage either in China or GAC, so we can't really lean on something which is actually open a lot of possibilities. We could just have done a cliche on a sports car, and then we would have presented this coming out from really the first Chinese sports car, at least from a big Chinese OEM, and everyone would have gone, oh, such a low-hanging fruit they went for, because it's just like replicate any other kind of known sports car brand. But we didn't, we didn't, because we set that up as a goal, but we took what is the purity of a sports car and exposed it, and then we rethought about it. But the whole kind of theme is actually the bathtub with the hula hoop, where the body comes in and it's the same kind of hard material and finish.
Reminiscent of a traditional older sports car from like the 50s, 40s, the very beginning of sports cars, right?
Yeah, had a lot of body
had
color.
A lot of body color coming
Yes.
inside the car.
And the simple metal work, just keep the transmission, steering wheel, whatnot, just putting those all together. We almost have that as like the exoskeleton. The upper IP, lower IP, just essential, structure, and we integrate the features inside those structures. So it's very simple and pure.
We have our hula hoop with the body color coming in. And then when Nick pointed out, let's arm wrestlers just continue that, create another loop again. Everything supports everything. The IP feel like it's floating, and then you look at it, you look behind, you see the support, so you just get this exposed structure.
Honestly, what we spoke about is almost like a see-through model, like you had these plastic kits of like how a motor works, and you can see the cylinders. A lot of that came with the sandwich and the transparency of layers of the seat. You understand how it's constructed, because we don't hide anything, so you go into the layers. The steering wheel, we were inspired by steering wheels, how they did it in America, remember?
The acrylic overlay over the metal like they used to do in the old days, yeah.
Literally expose the structure
Yeah,
of the steering wheel.
expose the structure of the steering wheel.
And Pontus went crazy with that
Yeah,
fine
all those
detail,
little details
laser detail
the
inside
model,
that metal structure, that fine things only the driver can see, yeah.
Yeah, but it's precision, right?
Yeah.
Because a sports car is an instrument of driving. Therefore, when you see everything, you go like, yeah, I'm all right.
Because it was such a new project, we felt that we needed to scan competitor vehicles. I remember we brought in a Miata to scan, because that was something that we felt was about the proper size and class of sports car that we were kind of aiming toward. Then we scanned your Aston as well. We based a lot of the ergonomics around probably those two scans the most.
And a Ferrari as well.
I constantly referred to those scans in the early days of the modeling process.
But those three cars kind of gave us really a good span or bandwidth of like a Miata, which is a great car, really for the people, and then to a kind of little bit more sports car, but more classic, to the more extreme supercar.
Right.
So we could kind of create our hybrid out of just those and do our own.
Well, the sports car kind of has traditionally like a feeling of power when you start it up, that sound, that feel, the vibration of the internal combustion engine. You take that away, we wanted to still capture an ignition, even though there is no ignition.
Turning that on and seeing that sequence of the current running throughout the car, I think that's something really cool.
You can feel the power, but this is just clean energy, but it's so efficient. We want to show a little bit about that, and that's where we have the light. Also giving some of the credit to the name Impulse, this pulsating kind of sensation.
Even thinking about our door is very clean and simple, And then you just have that lightsaber having everything on it. So you just have the door release there as well, the door handle, window controls.
All functions of the door captured within one element.
I remember seeing their theme and understanding the loop, the hula hoop, and then with the cross car beam.
It also started out very round, I remember, right?
Yeah, it
was very round.
Yeah.
And we
Very
kind of
proud of
adapted
you,
it, and it slowly became more like the exterior, so more holistic design.
When I see their architecture, it was good. The architecture was good, the volume was good. It was just too product-y. I think it was a good collaboration. Don made it more with Pontus together, faceted, more in context with the exterior, whatnot. Yeah, I think it came out nice collaboration, yeah.
A lot of the things for me also is the inside out. Being a roadster, an open car, of course the body coming in to the interior and vice versa was really evident.
It's not just, just another interior. It's thoughtfully designed from UX foundation, interior, inside out. So it all holistics works together.
We use the VR a lot through the whole process. We'll take the model into the VR and sit in the car and set up a chair about the right height, look at the pedal position and the IP, the reach zones and everything, make sure we can get a good feel within VR.
I think VR gives you like about 90, maybe 95% of, you can get the feeling of distance, proportion, but you have to do a lot of 3D printing for sure, just to double check that it is comfortable.
I remember we changed a lot of stuff based on those 3D prints. The steering wheel section, the first print was awful. So we
Very sharp,
back,
right?
yeah,
You have to start somewhere.
back to the drawing board. The switches on the lightsabers were very thin and sharp. We had to modify those as well. So we do learn a lot from those 3D prints. There's a lot of Easter eggs in that
Easter,
interior.
yeah, text everywhere.
Speakers, right? Like you would never know the speaker was there, but the graphic of the lines, just you're like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then you come in closer, you see little words, like music to my ears, I believe was one of them. It's a lot of different wordings that we came up. I remember we had like a list.
And everything is different. So the one that sees it like, oh, that's cool. And then they go to the passenger door and there's another text there. And there's a lot of those things throughout the car.
A lot of them behind the acrylic too. So it's even more hidden.
Some were actually hidden, the portable
Yeah.
speaker.
Yeah, the portable speaker one.
And
yeah.
the IP, there was some note there as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
And on the seat, have a seat. We have fun and we want to kind of transfer that to the people we show it for, or the client ultimate, to see like, wow, they really like this product and they put some extra TLC in it.
For the small percentage of people that do see it, it's like, wow, they really thought about the underneath side of the seat.
Even if you don't see all the details as its own entity, you still kind of see it as the whole image. That's what I think matters.
我一直在思考，什么是真正的自由？
什么是真正的自由？是突破极限的恒心，
是开拓生活边界的无限创造力。
是打破常规、孤军奋战的勇气。我们是命运的逆行者，共同的信念，使我们相遇。从此，自由的道路上有了志同道合的伙伴。 自由也变得更加有意义，创造与众不同的人生，才能释放独一无二的光彩。
The exterior, it has a lot of sculpture and with some very strong graphic element and almost fragmented or fractal and stealthy with very sharp treatment on certain ways because it's a sports car, it has to be beautiful. If any car has to be beautiful for people, it has to be a sports car. Our greatest inspiration was a very pure sports car and a sports car for the people. That said, we also wanted to do it with all the exotic sports cars attributes. I think that one of the big inspiration was actually our Eno 146 because the car is kind of shaped by the wind and we took a lot of learnings from that car just because it's an aero car and what could be better for a high performance sports car.
Yeah, I think the front end of the design of the Impulse definitely took the kind of flavor from the Eno, where they kind of more of a rounder nose and they had the kind of very distinctive kind of cutout where it was allowing the airflow under the car. They're quite full in section, almost classical in some moments, but then we have quite very strong dynamic lines cutting through that, so it's almost like a juxtaposition between the kind of the form languages.
Yeah, I was always thinking how to differentiate this electric sports car with combustion engine sports car. So I came up with very abstract idea. We have this diagonal line, fast line. We call it blade line. If you throw the watermelon, like Fruit Ninja game, the object just makes a nice curvature until you just hit the point, that smashing point, and then it changes the movement direction dramatically. From here to this point is more like analog combustion engine era, and from this point to the other direction would be more like the digital or electric era. And what makes this point enable is our design language.
I think the classic thing was always there was a car upper and a car lower. And even on the body side, then it would be like a body side upper and a body side lower. And I think what the interesting thing about this vector energy line, it kind of breaks away from that, like a shift in design direction. So it's not just an upper and a lower. Now you don't actually know where the upper meets the lower or the front meets the back. When people look at it, they're like, wow, it's not the normal setup of an architecture of a car.
Especially the body side, I think it's very striking because the contrast between the full volume of the metal thing, we create a diagonal section, the line that cut through. That contrast between those is very dynamic.
Yeah, I think that the other main thing I think the Hansu sketch captured very early on was the idea of the car being quite cab forward, which is quite rare. So I think we managed to capture that. It looks like a European's looking kind of cab forward, is very kind of pouncy. I think we ended up making the car almost look more expensive than it was supposed to look. One of Hansu's most iconic sketches at the beginning, I think it was you did it on a racetrack showing the Naka duct idea with all the venting on the back. Do you remember that sketch?
Yeah. Actually, that Naka duct graphic was started from Eno 1.46 concept, and then there was one weekend, then we had to figure out the final design of the Eno concept car, and then we didn't have that graphic yet. But then we just came into the weekend, and Pontus and I just kind of did a lot of doodle sketches, and then we came up with that Naka inspired graphic, and then it became our design DNA after that, and then it inherits to the Impulse and all different concept car.
We went into this project, if I remember rightly, and it was purely to be designed as a convertible car. That's quite a challenge. Because naturally, when you're sketching, you want to kind of do nice swoopy lines, and later on you think about it later. But, going into it knowing it's convertible was quite a hard task because, you're breaking some of the flow of the lines. But I think that we approached it that way because we want it to be quite thrilling. We're lucky to be here in California and have such great weather, and you can have the roof off and you're driving down the coast. But we were thinking, we can't do it for us, I guess, because the car was mainly for China. You're going to be driving through cityscapes in the nighttime and beautiful lights, and that's why we kind of did some of the lights on the car.
I think I was very adamant, the front windshield and having this almost it's just a glass canopy. Instead of as many convertibles, when it's open, the A-pillar just stops. But by having this integrated there, I think it's very appealing.
As a studio, we've been trying to, there's always a hook to the cars that we do. And on this one was when you're walking up to it, there's something different. It looks like a sports car, but there's something not traditional about it. So the grooves in the wheels, the grooves on the CD pillar area, just behind where the charging port is, and on the back of the car, it's not a normal engine.
We are not a mid-engine car, so we don't have the same need of ventilation and outlets. And I remember, Nicholas, we were speaking a lot about how to do the rear deck.
And I think that's where the grooves came from, right? Because he wanted to kind of make it look like it was ventilating something enough on an electrical device, be it a computer or something, but not so it looks like it needed to let a lot of heat out. It was a really fine balance because you want to look at it and go, ooh, okay, that's definitely doing something. We're not quite sure, it's not the traditional sense of it.
Makes it look like a heat sink.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
Already leads you to think that it's something electronic.
Usually the vent, you have a frame and then you have louvers inside, but we just wanted to just reverse the idea. So you have a frame in the middle, and then all the vent goes around the outside of the structures. So we just came up with a sushi roll, what is it, a California roll idea with images, like so rice on the side and then all the ingredient inside.
Another detail, like we try to be very unconventional, was the rear view mirrors.
I knew you were going to say that.
And you know, the interesting technology that is a screen and it's AI kind of assistant, but oh, that's another mirror that we fight with. It looked like a broken chicken wing.
Yeah, it's like holding your arm back.
It was horrible in the beginning.
We definitely spend an awful lot of time on details, and I think our studio has a thing for wing mirrors or side mirrors.
The mirror is a piece of art by itself. It's
Yeah.
literally like a standalone sculpture. Like you could just have that and just appreciate just the mirror. And that's the level of care that we want to put into all of our parts.
I think you'll probably see around the car, there's quite a lot of Formula One inspired elements on it. And I think there's kind of more like a second, third read, as what Hansu was mentioning about the rear lamps coming down, which kind of frames the logo, but also then it goes down into the diffuser. It looks like the kind of flashing brake lights you see on the back of the Formula One car. You know, you see the charge port on the CD pillar. And I think we came up with the idea from maybe Hansu's original sketch where you can imagine going into a pit stop almost and someone comes and charges it really quickly with a charge port. So we didn't want to kind of hide it with a door like a lot of cars do. We actually want to emulate it and, you know, show it very proud.
And then we wrote "It's electrifying" on it. But it was, you know, it's a cool mood.
We touched upon at the beginning of it, if I remember, like we were trying to work out with a sports car, when you turn the car on, you have a rumble, you have like a visceral reaction to the car starting. I remember finding it very hard of how are we going to get that excitement when you sit in the car? The interior team and I sat down. What we came up with was that it had to be a visual reaction, not a visceral kind of engine reaction. So I think when you start the car, you get that feeling from the lighting starting at the interior and it flows through the dashboard and the center console and goes to the exterior and goes out to the outside lighting. That's the car breathing instead of the engine rumbling. It's more the lighting doing it. And I think that was maybe from your rear deck idea with the lights.
Yeah, I played a lot with like theater effect scenarios, like A, B, C, D scenarios. The light flow from the rear to the front or front to the rear or driver to the like both sides.
You see the lighting coming out and you can feel like it's breathing, waiting for you to kind of use it.
And create things that don't exist, because like people forget that about design. Like we make things that don't exist all the time. This didn't exist. Like he drew a sketch, like we nursed it, he helped it along, he built the exterior, and now that car is sitting in China somewhere. We've never even seen it, but like it's a real thing.
As much as we push forward, I hope you guys still not giving up that passion and drive. That's what's exciting, I think. The eagerness to always do better and go beyond expectations. One of the most important things and one of the most understated things in the car industry is, of course, CMF. For us, it's essential to know what kind of materials and techniques certain things can be fabricated and design after that as a first parameter.
This was like a really interesting challenge, looking at how to take what it conventionally would be done for like a material concept and really rethink it for like the future, especially working with China and seeing how this Roadster really became the start of something new. You know, the first Roadster, you know, for them is a big, it's very significant in terms of what it means for progress for the country. So for us, when we started looking at the kind of baseline and where to start, it was all about new materials and new futures. So, you know, we tried to move away as much as possible from plastic. We try to think about how we can actually go all natural. You know, is there a way to just go away from plastic and try to incorporate as much natural fibers, going away into more vegan materials? And I know we still have a long way to go before we can stop using leather, but with new technologies, looking in like biofabricated leathers and stuff like this, I think in 3 years or so, we'll start to see, you know, use animals as the material.
But I also see it as a statement to go away from the cliche, what is a sports car? You expect a leather interior.
Exactly.
But you do something which is more novel, you do a vegan car out of it, and that feels also much more modern, and no one really miss it. Honestly, from the beginning I saw a green car, but Yishan felt very strong for yellow, which, you know, was not what I wanted to do in the beginning.
But it is also because of that, that your idea of continuing our concepts, right? The Entrance had this berry forest green, and Inno 146 team in Guangzhou, they won with the lotus flower. This blue-greenness But then out of that 6-passenger car, they had one yellow. Lotus flower has like a green flowers, and there's like that one center of it all is the yellow. And they basically set that up as a youth, the most important person in the family, the baby seat. The yellow was the symbol of youth, symbol of progress, and symbol of something newer. So we really wanted to connect that story. Right now we are in this very scared world where everybody's inside, we cannot go out. We also knew that, okay, maybe by the time we are actually done with this sports car, maybe it could be a new world, right? And how do we give people hope? Something different, something a little more maybe bright.
And we have a few mantras in the studio, and one of them is to go out of your comfort zone. And I remember we had this textile. When we did the VR, which we do really, really quick, we have attached it to the IP. And I was not a friend of that at all, because I thought, no, it just doesn't look so good. And then, you know, like we were arguing and discussing about it a little bit. And a few days later, I came back to Yishan, let's do it, you know. And then we kind of put it in the different directions. So they have something to do which side they are, like on the driver's seat and the passenger seat. And then it kind of match. But that is so fresh. And it's just because we dare to kind of challenge everything.
Also to think that, you know, we're using a furniture grade material, but reworking it for automotive. So really being able to go more into the sense of fashion with the support of Quadrat. You know, they give us a lot of support in developing the textile with Raf Simons, which was developed. So being able to bring that kind of sector of fashion into the car also really connected to the youth.
And also staying away from normal carbon or what other kind of sports car.
Exactly.
We want to have the techie feeling and the precision, but we don't want to be too cold. And I think that the balance we found, you know.
From a CMF perspective, also trying to get all of that correct, I think was quite an interesting challenge, because color is obviously perceived differently from one eye to the other. So sending all of that and working with the team was quite a cool challenge.
But also, again, thanks to our VR that we enter that really quickly, we actually look how it looks in the real environment, you know, as much as possible, because we have the texture and the textile scanned in, and we move these things around. And then once we go ahead and move ahead, we can see, oh, we actually have development of this that you wouldn't really get unless you went into 3D with the colors as well.
I mean, it's always evolving with the 3D too, because when we first started the first concept, remember, we were looking at red and kind of these dark blues, and that was with a completely different interior concept. Also, the exterior was completely different. Like, as the car started to evolve and change in 3D, we started to also evolve the CMF concept. So at one point we had, what, like 80 different color concepts we were submitting? I mean, we were going through...
It was quite a lot, yeah.
A lot of times we talk about inside out, but sometimes the exterior does end up being the focal point. But I think with this one, we really stayed true to that. And the exterior color just kind of take aside until we've really defined what the interior would look like. More muted, more neutral, which I think was what complemented the interior perfectly.
Once we start to find a formula, it's like laying a puzzle.
Totally.
Then it goes pretty quick.
Right.
You know, then it all kind of falls in places, and then it looks like it's perfectly planned from the get-go, but it's not. Well, it's a lot of research. And, you know, also coming back to the PR images that Yishan did, like, they really complement the interior. The interior is very colorful, and then the exterior takes a lot of shadow and light from the environment. We did almost like a very colorful canvas. Yeah. So it's all kind of a good balance.
There's a lot of great tension, texture tension too, from the interior. Looking at like how the seats, the IP, you know, even like the side panels, the door panels, how it all kind of worked really, you know, in sync.
And taking it into the UX UI as well.
Because everything has to be holistic. If each individual colors play too separate or very independent, then you are just in a place where all kinds of crazy colors just exist. But basically we can create that into a very, in a very tasteful, very, very fresh way, you know?
Right.
One of the things that sometimes is underestimated is the holistic approach of the whole car and weaving together also patterns and graphics also into the interior. I mean, we really do this inside out. We have reflections where we use the same kind of line work on 3D, on graphics, in the UX UI, and also, of course, on textiles, and even some of the stitches, like for instance on the steering wheel, what kind of puts it together is exactly our louvers. And one of the most iconic things is the very simple 2 parallel lines, which is almost like an icon what a race car is. They appear on the seat, some places, and then you see it on the floor, and then they reappear in the exact dimension on the 3rd spoke on the steering wheel. And then you can see that coming on and off from the front to the end of the car. And it's just like very, very subtle. And instead of having one big stripe, it's just giving a little bit of homage on that heritage and the origin of what a sports car is.
It's not in your face in a way. It's not really loud, but if you take a little more interest and if you're very curious, then you're actually going to find out. But you really have to like look at it and basically search for it, which I think is simply brilliant.
And I think like a good design should have a very strong theme and a first read, which is very strong, but then to be more long lasting, it has to have different layers, and there's things that you go like, oh, I haven't seen that before. Oh, I understand. It's just those little things that gives it a little bit more depth and personality. It's just different layers, and it's not like what meets the eyes at the first sight.
Normal process, somebody from our studio will fly there, oversee the entire build, right. But we couldn't do it.
When we initially were going to present it, COVID-19, the whole situation was super evident. There was a lot of rumors that the show will be cancelled. Some parts are easier because you say we have really good data, we make sure everything is having the right flanges and angles, but an exterior, and this one is so sculptural. How do you translate that to other people remotely? That was sleepless nights.
Yeah, because you can say like, how's the line look? It looks good. Like, how do you know what they're looking at?
From a CMF perspective, it's been very difficult. I mean, even the paint, the color that we see is the color we think we're going to get. But when you send it overseas, you don't actually know what's going to be sprayed out.
We have to make decisions based on actually not touching the things. What is the feel? What is the hand of it? We can't tell.
We had to like daily, oh, Yolanda, can we have some photos? Can we have some videos? Can you take some picture here, there? Constantly giving her feedback to improve.
It's all about the communication, but we have already established a good digital process. And digital process is not only how we work here, it's also how we talk to Fan and the guys in China. And I think that during this lockdown, it also helped us being efficient. Even if we are separated, we're still used to that process. This is a testament on how we can create something here digitally and have physically built and fed back with photos and information. And it worked, it's over expectations.
We had a lot of trust for our colleagues over there.
Here's our baby.
Yeah, hand our baby off and just hope for the best.
I am immensely proud of what the team has achieved.
Yeah, my question would be like, when can we see the car?
When it's finally safe to travel again, I'm going to go down with the entire team and we're going to sit in the Impulse. I can't wait. I can't wait to see it in flesh.
So what's next?
What's next? For me to know and for the rest of the world to find out.